Is that the man you want to be?
Roger put a comment, a lot of negative self-labeling is a way to avoid responsibility, A, or B, to get attention.
I'd also point out in some of the stuff I've learned from you, Jeff, and especially from Cynthia, from the female perspective, is that, you know what, there's a point for humility and there's a point to joking around or kidding around, but stuff like negative self-labeling and let's call it I don't know what the word is, maybe really talking about or thinking about yourself in a negative way. It's good if you want to be mommy's little boy and be taken care of, but it's not very masculine and it's not very sexy.
I'll add a little comment to that as well. Cynthia and I used to work in the school system with boys and girls, of course, as well. But there was a lot of boys that had issues around this being labeled and then following through on the expectations of that label. And especially the boys I saw is that they were so desiring a masculine presence in their life or an authority that they could trust and lean into, that they would lean into that label. I'm sure it was the same with girls as well, but a lot of that, it begins with understanding, so the positive side of a label is to try to understand what's going on. And then now we're talking about the adult, masculine, mature way to look at this down the road. You're no longer a child. We're not a student that we worked with. You're an adult man. And to Roger's point and Jason's point is now you can think about your thinking. You can decide your own judgments on this label, and you can decide whether you want to continue to label yourself that or not. So how does that hit you when I say that? If that man I was saying, he gets together with a woman and he's like, oh, man, and he owns this fucking shadow and they have hot sex or whatever happens, well, then down the road in his long-term relationships, he kept labeling himself that way. And there was a lot of collapse, a lot of lack of responsibility, and that's a big thing.
Hey, Jeff, a lot of it too, I think is, speaking from my own experience, I mean, not so much recently, but in the past, that I think a lot of that is, a cry out or a request for validation. And that comes from insecurity. You'll say, oh, I'm so shitty or I'm so fat. And you're really looking for somebody to come in and say, oh, no, you're not. No, you're not. And, I don't so much do that anymore, but for things like that, for me, it's really helped with the covert contracts. Like I used to always get bent out of shape, even relatively recently, when I'd say, I love you to my wife, and she either didn't hear me or didn't respond or whatever. And I'm like, I love you. And, going back to the mantra, I said, one of the internal mantras I have is don't be a whiny bitch. Another one is insecurity is not sexy. Just remember that. Even if you're not secure, you don't have to show it. You can be vulnerable, but don't be a pussy.
Yeah. What was the first one? What was your first mantra?
Don't be a whiny bitch.
Don't be a whiny bitch. Got it.
Yeah, so like when my wife does something that annoys me now, or something, or like her, she and her mom took over the kitchen. That's my duty, but they had to micromanage. And I used to get like all bent out of shape, like, no, I'm doing this, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I'm like, shit, I got some free time.
Yeah.
That's what I was like last night, and it didn't bother me. I didn't let it get to me because I wasn't a whiny bitch.
I love it, dude. I love it. Yeah. And so, so the coach in me wants to add on, what your values are, what your nuts are. And one of your nuts is you don't give a shit if they're going to come in and, start to micromanage in the kitchen. You're going to flow with that in a fun way. Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Good.
Well, think about it and try to also, I think it helps. I'm on a roll today. Call me butter, but I think it helps to think practically. That instead of being wedded to this ideological notion of, okay, well, they're invading my space or they're implicitly devaluing what I'm doing and how I do it. It's like, well, shit, I didn't really want to clean anyway. Just be practical. I mean, it's not like they're taking away, drinking vodka and watching porn. I mean, it's, it's like, I don't know.
You don't want them taking that away. I mean,
yeah, I know.
I love it, Roger. So good, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's so valuable to know what your nuts are. So nuts are non-negotiable, unalterable terms. Wayne Levine has a book, Hold On to Your Nuts, that we talk about. And that basically means know your values, your wants, and your boundaries. And those are all different things, by the way. Okay. And your boundaries are when other people may cross them. And your values are how you act in the world. Okay. And a value that I have, and we talk about Stoic philosophy on this show a lot, which is I can choose how I judge the thoughts that come in my mind. That's a value of mine, that I know I can choose my thoughts and I can choose the judgment of those thoughts. So Roger, that was beautiful. Like, hey, I could be a whiny bitch about this, a whiny little boy about this, but I'm choosing to have a different judgment on that. I'm choosing, I'm choosing to think like, hey, it's cool. They can clean the kitchen, great, and I'm not gonna start a fight. You know, I'm gonna look at this pragmatically. I'm gonna move forward. Everyone's more happy that way. Yeah, Roger gets what he wants.